My name is Joanne Leslie Tabachek. My mother taught me to knit and crochet when I was quite young, so I learned that before I was 10. And I can remember making things for my dolls and crochet doilies and those kinds of things. And I still have a Christmas present that I got one year, and it was a junior handicraft kit. And it contained a tiny rigid head loom and a hoop for embroidery and spool knitting, so there was one of those wooden spools. So we did all those kinds of things. I do embroidery and weaving and spinning and knitting. So the knitting I learned from my mother, but the other crafts, one led into the other. So I worked at the Freshwater Institute, which is just off campus, as a research biologist. And a person that came to work there was named Roberta York. And she was a craftsperson. So she talked me into taking an embroidery course at Leonida Leatherdale's embroidery studio, which I think it just opened about then. And so I took that and took canvas work. And then Roberta was also a weaver, and she had met a woman named Christina Prokupa, and Christina was from Sweden, and she was a master weaver, and she'd gone to a famous weaving school in Sweden. And Roberta talked her into doing a beginner's weaving course at the university. Yeah. And then she went around trying to get all of her friends to sign up for it so there'd be enough in the class, and so I took it. And it was a wonderful course. Christina was a really good teacher. And she had us do samplers and then design and weave a set of placemats. And to me, it was like embroidery. I could do a different border on each one, different colors, and I could change the border. And so, yeah, it was like embroidering on this loom. So I was sold. That was it. I bought a secondhand loom, and I started weaving, and I joined the Weavers Guild. So this is a 10 shaft loom, but I'm only using 4 shafts right now for this. Oops. So I'm changing the shed with each pass of the weft. Okay. Yeah. So I'm using a fairly heavy cotton right now too, and my aim is to choose a couple of the patterns and do a large blocky tote bag afterwards. So that's why I've chosen large a heavier cotton. It's 8/4 cotton. And in terms of spinning, Roberta was the instigator again, because she wanted me to take a course with her at the Crafts Guild in spinning from Francine Reuter. But she convinced me that it was only a weekend, so I took the course. I wasn't very good at spinning. I didn't take to it naturally. But by the end of the weekend, I understood how to draft. Usually I spin quite fine yarn, so I'm spinning this a little thicker than I usually do. So I'm spinning at a fairly slow speed with my biggest whirl on the wheel. So it will be moving slowly, not adding too much twist for a thicker yarn. Now I'll just stop and I'll put 2 of the plies together the way it'll be for a finished yarn, and it's going to be quite a bulky yarn, which is what I want. Okay, well, Old College it's north of Calgary, and it's an agricultural college. Yeah, the Master Spinners course, it's taught every summer during Fiber Week at Olds. I took the first level course and learned a lot, and I was planning to go back and take level 2, and I couldn't take it that year because I had to take care of an ill relative. But I took level 3 and 4, and then took a break again because that was enough samples for me. I couldn't do another winter's worth of doing samples and sending in 2 binders of homework. I have a whole shelf in my office now that's the binders from from the old assignments. Those are my first courses, and those courses led into other courses and workshops, and finally into then going to Old College to get a master spinner certificate. There were projects as well, which you could choose what the skill that you were or the craft you were going to use. So in level 4 there was a 25-hour project. You could do whatever you wanted. And so I did a silk scarf, which I wove. I dyed and wove. So I used several crafts in order to complete, that part of the homework. And level 6 was the final year, and that consists of a 1-week exam, 7 days of spinning skeins of materials to certain specifications. And then and we also did dyeing, so we did indigo dyeing I took along cotton that I'd spun for the indigo, and we did chemical dyeing. I took along wool to dye, and we reeled silk from cocoons. It's all part of and there was a written exam. And then that wasn't all of it, because then there's an independent study that you need to do and complete within a year. So the 2 binders for my independent study are on the dining room table. It was the using only high whirl spindles to spin knot, snarl, spiral, and boucle novelty yarns, which one of my teachers didn't think was possible, but it was. So snarl is a snarl yarn, and then I add a knit or wove with each of the yarns. The kinds of circles that you get with the boucle, the kind of loops you get, it was dependent on what kind of fiber you choose. This was mohair. You get lovely round loops with mohair, adult mohair. You get smaller loops with, this is Wensleydale. And then you get tiny loops with the silk that I used. And I cabled this so that there's actually double the amount of loops. I'm still surprised that I got it done during the year, because that was the year I ever got leukemia. So that was the week I got home from the final exam. He was diagnosed. I think my life has really been affected by craft, and not just my craft, but my husband's craft. So my husband was Edward Tabachek, and he was a wood turner. My house is filled with wood turning and furniture and things he's built. So it has impacted my life, just because of those connections.